Okay. Getting nice and comfortable. Settling yourself. Crown of the head released upward. Your shoulders and elbows sinking down. Releasing and decompressing your neck. Softening your chest. Releasing your upper back. Softening your belly and your lower back. Releasing the weight of your body down through to that space in front of the sitting bones. Softening your glutes, your hips, your thighs. Let that wave of release travel all the way down to the feet. Softening and lengthening from the center outward. Releasing from the base of the neck upward as you let go of the compression in your neck. Your head releases upward, away from the center. From the upper body, softening outward through your arms to your fingertips. So there's this wave of softening and lengthening outward. And then from the lower body, the lower back, the hips, this wave of softening and lengthening out toward the feet. Sometimes if I sit down and I'm contracted and then I soften and my body lengthens, I have to reposition my arms and legs because my limbs are now a different size. So really take the time to soften long. Just a couple more minutes. Exhaling and softening. Inhaling and deepening your stillness. Warming my hands up a bit more. Oh, hey, Del. Welcome. My voice is still a bit tired today, so I'm gonna not talk too much. But warming your hands. And as we go through the head and the face and the neck release, please do remember to maintain this comfortable upright posture. And Nate. We have a Nate. Thanks for coming so often. Keep your breath released, your body soft. I will take off my headphones. And of course, before I do so, I want to welcome the people who are coming here for their first time. If you need to, please do check down below for a link to an instruction video. That way you can learn how to do this class a bit more simply than trying to follow along with us. We're in the last week of a 100-day set, and so we're doing a little less instruction, working more on some of the difficult things. for one ring. Yeah. It's like how long they pile up. Always taking the time to settle and soften. If you're feeling especially distracted or dispersed, then maybe spend some extra time in that settling position, just helping your body sink. Learning to listen to your body. And again, just as a reminder about posture, setting yourself so that the more you soften, the more stable and the lighter you become. And I know that in the beginning, that's a very difficult thing if your body's very bent out of shape, because you're putting yourself into a correct position, which to you feels like this. And here I'm telling you, relax. And of course, that's difficult. But just recognize where you're going, and softening is the tool to ask your body to change. Because you're no longer holding it how it was, you're making space so that it can become how it will be. And we use this clear upright frame as the shape that your body can take. And especially for people who do meditation, it's very common to sit in meditation and holding your body up. And it's exhausting because you can only hold yourself for so long. It's also very distracting for your meditation and causes tension in your mind and your chi to rush upward. Are you pointing at the bird? Mel's over there watching that little drinking bird. And instead, find a way to sit so that the more you let go through your body, the more you settle into this correct location, the further it decompresses your body, decompressing your spine, your soft tissues, your breath. And the more you let go downward, the more there is this feeling of being lifted upward. And I don't mean that in a nebulous, metaphorical kind of sense, like you feel uplifted. No, I mean, there's a feeling of being lifted up. And so we want to find a way to soften into that possibility. And make sure that your legs stay released. Your whole body is loose and easy. No gripping. Otherwise, we can't find that possibility. Softer and softer. easing the whole front of the shoulder. I think I've become a fan of letting my arm hang as I soften this area open. It tends to make it a little bit easier for it to rearrange its shape. But you can sit however is comfortable for you. Softening and releasing. Remember that you can use your hand to help. Your hands getting softer, your wrists and forearms more relaxed, more through, connected. When your mind wanders away, soften around the distraction, find a way to lose interest in it, and let your mind come back. Don't react to the distraction if you can help it. Sun's starting to come out finally. Oh, it feels nice. So for me, for some reason, these inner and outer gate points are always the slowest to respond, the most obstructed, probably just from a lifetime of being put in wrist locks and punching stupidly hard things. And so I always have to spend extra time there to connect. And you want to pay attention to what it feels like for you to be able to connect, so you can notice the spaces that need the extra attention. Our habit is to the opposite. We tend to over-focus on the places that are super easy and ignore the places that are especially difficult. And that can be a strategy, to use the easiest places to expand from. So if this area was super easy for me to soften and relax, and then I can practice spreading this softness to the more difficult place, to let this softness inform this space, just with a gentle intent and the movement of my hand. It's pretty simple. So you can do that, but, and it sounds funny to say, don't ignore the ignored places. Pay attention to find the spaces that are your weak links, so that you can nourish them. If there's particular points that you just notice are very disconnected, then it's worth taking note of that and coming back to it again and again. Just the weight of your hand. Remember that you're only putting enough pressure to sink below the surface of the skin, above the bone, above the musculature, into that warm, liquid place between. So if you find yourself beginning to apply lots of pressure, or to push against yourself, or to do things, chill out a bit. Just relax. It's not difficult. It doesn't require a lot of mechanical force. You're simply just softening. So even here, it's just the weight of your hand and your fingers resting. Nice to that tendon there in that space, yeah. I was feeling a bit lung qi deficient the last few days, really, but yesterday mostly. And I noticed how nourishing and comfortable it felt to spend time on this lung channel. And these days, for the most part, I don't really get sick the way that it's usually referenced. I noticed that sick for me is, oh, I don't feel quite as energized. And I was noticing, like, oh, I feel a little stiff, but I wasn't actually stiff. I didn't have a single pain in my whole body. And I wasn't actually tired. I just wasn't feeling sparkly. And for me, that's low energy. And so I stopped. And I stopped doing everything. I canceled some classes. I didn't drive into town. Mel's always very supportive with that. I just bundled myself into bed and rested as much as I could. And that's the kind of listening that we're doing here, where we pay attention to, oh, something's a little off here. But we can only know that if we know our bodies and we pay attention. As soon as I feel like my body is being challenged by something, I give it space to work through it. Keeps me from getting actually sick. I'll still tell my friends usually, oh, I'm feeling sick, because it's too difficult to try to explain. Pay attention to allowing yourself to have the space required to heal. And sometimes if there's a lot of healing, then you need a lot of space. And being willing to give yourself that space is something that, at least in my culture, is often frowned upon. So you have to be willing to take it for yourself. Sometimes we have to find ways to make room. If we are just living from this day-to-day consistent stress run, all our energy is being used up in whatever we're doing, kids and school and life and job and whatever people are experiencing, divorce or death or illness. The world doesn't decide to give you room. And so you just have to say, I am now taking space. Some cultures actually have that space built in, which is really nice. But mine doesn't. So I've spent a good portion of my life living in monasteries, ashrams, retreat centers, living in RVs, living in my car for years, living in a tent or cabin in the woods for years, just to find space for myself, where I wasn't having to go and rush around and do things, but I could center and settle and really pay attention. It is highly recommended. And I try to tell most people that when your life is balanced enough, when you're not needing meds and hospital care and you're not going to have children that will starve without you, when you have enough space, that it really is worth going on a long meditation retreat. No speaking, just practice for weeks, months, years at a time. However long you can take. It usually takes weeks, well, about a week of no speaking and meditating and practicing all day long, just for the biggest, most aggressive part of your mind to slow down. And then it takes several more weeks for your mind to slow down further. And it's usually, like they say, 49 days before any deep change starts to happen. And so just these longer and longer cycles, they feed into each other. And you get really deep change that you can't get unless you do those kinds of practices. And so if you have the opportunity, I highly recommend it. But please use a method that is healthy and good for you, not one that tears you apart. You want to end up healthier at the end of it, not thrashed, which is unfortunately common. being kind, friendly, gentle. Again, you don't have to try to push emotions at yourself. That's not good for you either. But you soften around your emotions. You uncover your natural friendliness. If you were to reach out and help a young infant fall back to sleep after a bad dream, you wouldn't have to try to force emotions. You would naturally be tender and present, kind, gentle. You wouldn't poke at it with a sharp stick. So don't do that to yourself. Just be here. Notice what's going on. Make space. Warming and nourishing digestion. Softening and allowing your breath to reach into your abdomen. Not pushing your breath, that's not softening. Don't pull and push on your breath. Just make room for it. Get out of the way. Let your breathing do its own thing. A lot of the breathing practices that are sold these days as Taoist are actually often prohibited until you can learn deep methods of release. The pushing and pulling aspect, the adding tension aspect, just causes problems. Just moving at your own pace, emphasizing sinking and consolidating, softening and opening. If your mind wanders off, again, just stop reacting, stop taking part. If you notice yourself, for instance, having a conversation, maybe an argument with somebody from 20 years ago, that kind of thing, it's the same. tiny portion of discussion you've had 10,000 times. And if you notice that, then all you have to do is not fight it. Don't continue the argument. Don't push it away. Just notice that it's happening. Notice that it's ridiculous and wasteful and pointless. Just notice what's happening. And then usually what will happen is your mind will go, oh, real life, and it will come back. As long as you can become awake in those momentary dreams, kind of look around at the dream and notice that it's not interesting, not helpful. Maybe it's uncomfortable for no reason, because here you are in the quiet, being gentle and kind. And your awareness simply settles into what's happening. You don't have to do anything. You just have to wake up. And waking up is also effortless. It's not up to you. It kind of happens when it happens. So none of it requires energy. Your mind drifts. At some point, you notice yourself drifting. Notice the drifting. Let it dissolve. And naturally, you settle back into the moment. And at first, that can take a few seconds. And as it keeps happening, and you keep returning and keep returning, it gets easier and easier until it happens on its own, and your mind drifts less and less because you're not reacting. It's the reaction that powers it. Opening the front of your hips, and whichever part of your hips is tightening up. By opening these areas in the body, it makes it a little easier for chi to sink down, especially while standing. When these rip and tighten, it tends to send your chi up. And for those of you who are embracing a life of celibacy in any form, then you want to spend a lot of time softening your belly and softening open this space so that chi can continue to sink through. Warming and softening the lower back. One of the things I like about this spot is that in the camera, the various windows act like mirrors on my back, so people can see what I'm doing. Also warming the tailbone. Softening your arms and your shoulders. No need to do it until they become tight. And then allowing that warmth to soak in. And then wait until your arms feel soft again. And then continue. Sometimes that can take a minute. If you're somebody who deals with difficulties in circulation, then maybe it will take longer, in which case you pause and you wait. Or you stop before you introduce tension. But you don't want to continue just adding more and more tightness to your body. You just end up getting worse instead of better. So please take your time, paying attention. This point is about halfway down. For most people, when they stand, wherever their middle fingers land. That's usually where it is for most people. If you're somebody like ZhiCheng Shifu, who has unreasonably long arms, then it might be a little higher than that. You lanky people. Softening your hands, feeling the warmth of your hands soaking in. And again, I offer those images, those visualizations of water soaking into a sponge or ink soaking into paper. Some people visualize light from their hands moving in. And that can help guide your awareness into the right layer. But as with all visualizations and use of the imagination, as soon as we can, we want to leave those things behind because you don't want to introduce the habit of daydreaming while you're practicing. You want to notice what's happening. And so we can use things like visualization or, imagining that we're moving like certain animals, those kinds of things, to help us uncover specific qualities or to help guide our awareness into difficult spaces. But then as soon as we can find them, we want to let the imagination go and just work with the quality itself. So feel free to use these visualizations like the ink into paper or like colored lights in the body, but don't get trapped with them. They tend to lead in the wrong direction. Remember to continue decompressing your neck. If you decide to lean forward, then don't do the turtle squish neck thing, and also don't hang your head or your shoulders. Your spine stays long and through, just at a different angle, hinging from the hips. Your shoulders and your arms are soft, your legs are soft. Be comfortable and free as much as you can. Also notice if you're holding your breath. Sometimes people hold their breath to stabilize themselves through tension. We want to release that. We want to become stable because of softness, throughness. If we soften enough, then our body is able to connect through so that our whole body holds us up instead of very localized places. Softening your hands. Easing open that point in the calf. Softening that musculature alongside the shin. Hands soft. Just easing this area open. Your whole lower leg. You want all of your leg here to be comfortable, free. Remember to pay attention. See if there's any spot that suddenly lights up to let you know that maybe there's something wrong. You can only notice if you pay attention. Staying very soft, opening your feet. I thought my feet were soft before I started this class, and now they feel all bendy in new directions that I didn't know they could bend. These last 100 days have been very transformative to my body. Continue that soft and friendly touch. Avoid trying to turn your body into a project or yourself into a project to do. You're just here, letting yourself be naturally friendly and curious, kind. That habit of treating yourself like you're broken is really hard to correct and change later. So don't feed into it. You're just here. You're like a gardener who just enjoys watering plants in the garden because it's nice. It's nice to be with the plants. It's nice to smell them and feel the soil and to be outside in the sun. It's a nice experience. But if you treat it like a chore, then it becomes an unhappy experience. It's like that with everything. We're simply here. Remember to move like that drinking bird toy that I was showing. You hinge from the hips, softening down the backs of the legs. Body is easy. And then don't pull yourself up. As best you can, sink down to your lower body and let your body be drawn up. It's like just settling back up because your bottom part gets heavier and so it lifts you up. So the first thing you do, you hinge down the backs of the legs to the feet. And then as you draw up, soften down your body to your belly. And again, it sounds funny, but it really does work. You don't have to pull yourself up. You simply sink down. All the way up to your hips, waking up your legs. And again, I'll move my hands to show what I'm doing with my feet. Hopefully you do this series every day before you get out of bed. Very helpful for your kidney channels, for your whole body. And then spreading your toes, pulling up, not just by folding your toes, but by circling and wrapping around that bubbling spring point in the bottom of your foot. Something like a quarter of people actually have a more functioning hinge here in the center of the foot, so that the middle of the foot actually can cave around a little bit. My foot doesn't have that hinge. But if you do, you're lucky and you should continue to help it become more awake and alive. The rest of us have lost that ability. Turning your waist, your navel, not just your shoulders, as best you can. If you'd like to lay flat on the ground, you're welcome to. And spend a couple minutes just letting your body release and rest. Your awareness is spreading out, shared throughout your whole body, and especially aware of this layer that we've been working on. But kind of a gentle, general awareness. And at some point you find yourself back in a comfortable seated position. There really isn't any hurry. You can stay laying flat if you'd like to. And let your awareness spread out again. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate you coming. I won't have time to answer more questions because I have to zip away to my disciple class. But I appreciate everybody coming. Thank you for joining me on this beautiful, windy spring day. Looks like the rain stopped. The sun is kind of out. There's no blue sky, but it's warm. I'll take it. Just through this window behind the camera, we have a bamboo grove, and the bamboo are very frisky, dancing around in the wind.